everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for yet another edition of the Making of a Transformational Leader with Tolu Omadara here on Amogate Radio Communications. It's such a joy and a delight to be continuing this with you, and I promise you we are going to be launching a little bit more into the deep, continuing from where we began last week. But first, let's do a quick summary. So what did we discuss last week? Last week, we were looking at the visioning element of transformational leadership. I'll say that again. We're looking at the visioning element in transformational leadership. In other words, what are the things? First of all, what is the place of visioning in transformational leadership? Why is visioning a critical part of transformational leadership? And what are some of those vision setting elements required for you to truly be demonstrating transformational leadership? And of course, when it comes to raising transformational leaders for your organization, for your institution, for succession, these are also the things you need to be pipelining into those whom you are preparing for transformational leadership. Now, one of the things to know, just as a quick recap, one of the things to know is that transformational leadership is about leading change. And it doesn't matter how old you are as an organization. We established that last week. Whether you're 100 years old, whether you're 150 years old, or whether you're just starting. Because organizations that are able to become transgenerational are those who continually reinvent themselves in responsiveness to the changes of our VUCA world. Of course, VUCA there means volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. That's the reality of today's world. Just look at COVID. It changed the world in many ways, we know, right? And these are things that will continue to happen. It's COVID today. It was SARS at some point. Another point, it was a global economic recession. There will always be uncertainties associated with the environment of business, associated with the environment of public sector institutions, and so on and so forth. It doesn't matter the sector. Even in the non-profit organizations, you have to reinvent yourself sometimes because the expectation of the people you are serving differs and changes from time to time. So change is a constant. Let's establish that. It does not matter the sector you are operating in, you cannot escape from the demands of change. So if you're supposed to be continually responsive to change, then as an organization, you need to always have a pipeline of leaders, current leaders who can handle transformation, who can initiate transformation, who can breath transformation, and of course, have them in both present and future, right? Have them continually, in fact, even have them in the past if necessary, have those that you connect with from time to time, even if they have retired from the organization or maybe they've been your mentors and so on and so forth. And we'll speak to some of these things shortly. But first, let's talk a little bit more about why is it important for you as a transformational leader to be able to articulate a vision of the future, whether you are a young organization, a growing organization, or an organization that is attempting to reinvent itself after centuries of existing. The reason why that is important, like we've already said, is to stay responsive, right? That is very, very important. Now, this was some of what we discussed last week. We discussed some other things last week, but we're going to go a little bit deeper because last week, I also promised that I was going to come back to the issue of how do you develop a vision, right? I sort of tried to walk us through some of the characteristics of a great vision. A good vision must be clear, very, very important. Clarity is critical. It lays the foundation for conviction. If you're trying to persuade people to buy into your vision, to have conviction about your vision, there must be clarity. Clarity lays the foundation for conviction. It's not negotiable. You can't say, and we are trying to, I think we are trying to, maybe, then if that happens, who is going to follow a leader like that, right? You don't want a leader who is prevaricating. You want a leader who is clear, who is articulate, who is, if necessary, consistent. Now, I'm using the word if necessary because there are times where you probably want to re-envision as a leader. We've said that. But by and large, it's not that you're shifting the goalpost every minute because you yourself do not have clarity, nor do you have conviction. How then do you elicit that from your followers? So extremely important, we talk about the need for clarity. We also talk about the need for conciseness. Of course, we established the fact that without clarity, there can be no conciseness. If you're not clear about what you're trying to achieve, then you can't say it in as few words as possible. It must be clear, it must be concise, it must be challenging, it must be something that speaks to the greatness in people, that activates them, that something that looks impossible is possible. Extremely important. Last week, I shared my thoughts that I strongly believe that every human being has in him or her the desire to conquer the mountain, something that hasn't been done yet. Many times they're just looking for leaders who can connect with that, and they will follow such leaders. If those leaders can inspire them, very important. And that's one of the critical attributes of a transformational leader. A transformational leader is inspiring. A transformational leader awakens the giant in his or followers. Very, very important. So the vision must not just be concise, the vision must not just be clear, it must also be challenging. Of course, it must be future-oriented. It's not a vision if it's looking into the past. It's not a vision if it's been done already. And that's why there's a reason why the eyes and the body actually look forward. I've never seen a man or a woman with eyes at the back of his or her head. So if it's truly a vision, it's supposed to be forward-looking. It's supposed to be future-oriented. It's supposed to have been yet to be done, right? Extremely important. So we talked about some of those characteristics of a good vision, right? And we said transformational leadership is about birthing change, but first conceiving it. I'm going to come around here. I'll say that again. Transformational leadership, we said last week, is about birthing change, bringing forth change, executing change, right? We said the transformational leader is not just a dreamer. There are people who know how to dream only, but they don't know how to do. I'm sorry, they are not leaders. But there are people who also know how to do, in other words, carry out instructions, but they don't know how to conceive what needs to be done. They also cannot be said to be transformational leaders, though we have the place for good executioners too, those who are very good at executing things. A truly transformational leader can birth a change and also conceive it. A truly transformational leader can bridge the gap between vision and implementation. Anyone who is worthy of that term, of that designation, transformational leader, would be able to, articulate the change, envision the change, but also proceed from there to, birthing and activating that change and going beyond activation to completion. Right. And those are some of the things we'll talk later: follow through, resilience, and so on and so forth. But for today, we are starting with the part of conceiving the change. Before a child is brought forth, the child first has to be conceived. I've never seen a child who was suddenly brought forth. A child has first to be conceived, right? So today we are going to dwell on how do we even conceive a vision. I promised last week that we're going to say, okay, in case you are wondering, Tolu, how do I even think of a vision? How do I even articulate a vision? How do I even come up with a vision? You keep saying that these things can be pipelined, these things can be identified, but they can also be nurtured. So how do I nurture this ability to articulate a vision, to conceive a vision? So today we're going to be looking at developing and communicating vision as a transformational leader. I'll say that again: developing and communicating vision as a transformational leader. However, we're going to be spending more time on the developing part of it, on the part where you are developing that vision, and then later on we'll go more deeply into the communication aspect. So how do we conceive of change? Now, I need to say some things here. I'm going to be talking about 4 main things, and these are things that I have learned by experience. These are things I've also practiced, and these are things that I've attempted to teach others. 1, passion. Extremely important. What are you passionate about? You may have heard it several times, but it is as true as it is old. It's important to know what your passion is. It's important to know what it is. Sometimes people talk about skills versus passion, abilities versus interest. For me, I would probably say be more concerned about the things you're passionate about. Now, does that mean you cannot upskill? Definitely not. Even in the areas where you're passionate, often you still have to build up your skill. You still have to go deeper into it. But it's important to identify what is it you are passionate about. It's important to know what would you do even if nobody paid you for it. What would you easily volunteer your time and effort for? What is it that you will serve humanity with? And that brings me to the second element for vision identification: gaps. Gaps. Remember last week we said typically a vision is not something that has been done before. I remember saying, imagine Apple before Apple. If it had been done by then, it could not have been a vision for Steve Jobs, right? It needed to be something that was a gap. And typically in research, they will talk about what are the gaps in the literature. There will have been some things that have been discovered, but there will also be some things that are yet to be explored, or whether there is no evidence of it or there is little evidence for it. So it's important to identify the gaps. What are the gaps in that area you're passionate about? If you're passionate about public health, what are the gaps in public health? If you're passionate about mental health, what are the areas where you think that humanity is still lacking as far as mental health is concerned? If you're passionate about artificial intelligence, what are the gaps, for instance, in machine learning? What are the gaps, for instance, in coding? What are the gaps, for instance, in full stack coding? If you're passionate about teaching, what are the gaps in the education of, for instance, disadvantaged children? If you're passionate about education, what are the gaps, for instance, in policy education? Do we have to do more with homeschooling? If you're passionate about security, what are the gaps, for instance, with the legislation supporting or the legislation guarding ease of access to some kind of questionable weapons in a place like the United States? I could go on and on and on. Imagine Obama not knowing exactly what he wanted to be his signature legislation. That's risible, right? That's laughable. He came in knowing that if there was any legacy he wanted to leave after 4 or 8 years in the White House, it had to be Obamacare. Go try taking away Obamacare today. He's been gone from that position for about 8 years, but I've not seen anybody undo what he left as a signature legislation. That takes me back to what I was saying last week. Many times, the reason why your vision is not concise is because it's not yet clear. And what I've added this week is also because you have developed sufficient conviction around. I'm going to say that again. The reason why your vision is not compelling is because you yourself have not developed sufficient conviction around it, and you are still too spread in many directions. We're working with a client recently, and we kept saying to the client, look, there's a reason we teach strategic prioritization in our months. There's a reason when we work clients, we first say to them, once you have 6, 7, 8 objectives, then you have lost the meaning of priority. Then you don't know the meaning of priority. Anytime you hear the word prioritization, it suggests discrimination. Anytime you hear the word strategic prioritization, it compels a strategic discrimination. It means you have to eliminate what looks like the good so you can pursue the best. What does all this have to do with your vision? You see, a vision, like we said last week, is not something that happens overnight. It's typically gargantuan. It's often demanding. It's something that would stretch you. And so in the course of pursuing that vision, if you are truly going to birth change, I know we're not really talking about birthing change today. We're talking about conceiving change, but you also don't want to abort that baby. If you want to take time to conceive that baby, then you also want to birth that baby. Now, if you are going to birth that change, you want to know ab initio that this matters so much to me that I can sideline other things that look good so I can focus on this thing that is the best. Vision requires prioritization. Prioritization demands discrimination. Discrimination means that vision is so important that you can sideline other things that look good, but that will be an enemy to this vision that is the best. Just imagine Steve Jobs today. Even though he's long gone, you cannot think about Apple and not think of Steve Jobs. That was his signature legacy. That is his signature legacy. Think about Microsoft, and today you think about Bill Gates. Yes, there's Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Yes, he has done certain other things, but his signature legacy is still Microsoft. I'm telling you, when you're talking about a vision, you have to identify that thing you will sacrifice every other thing for. I hope you're understanding me. It's not something mixed with too many other things. Remember those 4 elements I told you? That when you're trying to develop a vision, when you're trying to conceive a vision, you have to know 1, passion, and 2, the gaps. I think I'm yet to mention the other 2. I'll come to that, and if we don't get to that, we'll continue next week, right? Passion and the gaps. What am I passionate about? What am I ready to discriminate other things for, right? What am I ready to discriminate other things because of this thing? You have to identify that thing. And of course, that thing you must channel that passion to fill a gap in society. Otherwise, it may not be a vision. You can be passionate about technology from now till tomorrow. You cannot create another Apple. It already exists. You cannot create Wi-Fi. You already have it. You have to be thinking about the next thing. Do you want to create some kind of technology that enables wind and offshore wind energy? Do you want to create some kind of technology that supports further aeronautic exploits? You figure it out. It's your area. But all I'm saying is that passion is not enough. Passion, of course, is foundational. You need to know what you were born for, what you're passionate about, what gets you up in the morning. When you have done that, you must also look at the gaps in that area. What are the things humanity is still lacking in that area? What are the possibilities we are yet to explore? What are the things that can still be done with that field? Rather, you're passionate. So it's very, very important to spot the gaps. And this brings me to the third part. When you're trying to spot the gaps, you need a lot of research. You know, many years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I used to say that excellence is diligence plus intelligence. And I remember, I think it was Albert Einstein that said genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. That's the diligence part of it. I used to say excellence is diligence plus intelligence. I've seen a lot of intelligent people, very, very intelligent people. But you see, that diligence element can shortchange one if one is not careful. And it comes in different forms. There is mental diligence, intellectual diligence. There is also intellectual indolence, intellectual laziness. You must be diligent to deep into what has been done in your field. You must be, diligent enough to explore. And this comes in several forms. And that brings me to the fourth element that can help you in developing a vision: mentors. Mentors. Recently, I heard of a very dear mentor of mine who passed. His name is Jikato. For those of us who are Nigerians, Jikato used to be the one who more or less bred Takaki, the African Voice. It was a program as far back as 1997, which was the first, Monday to Friday news TV program, morning TV show, and it was wonderful. I remember the guy would take me to his desk back then, and I would teach me. He would mentor me. A lot of the things I'm doing today, he taught me some of the things that I have added to them. Why am I talking about this? Yes, I had my passion for what I'm doing today. I recognized some gaps. I had done my research, but I also met mentors. Now, typically, I don't think that you can even know the kind of mentor you need until you have done your research. Because normally what mentors do is that they guide you in what you don't know yet, what they have already experimented with. They've gone ahead of you in some ways. They are typically in your field already. But if you don't even know the gaps in which you want to grow, if you don't know the gaps in which you want to develop, if you don't know the areas that you want to add to yourself in, how then do you know who you need to be your mentor? How then do you know the kind of skills you require to mentor you? Because yes, there is a part of mentoring that is about connection, because I doubt if you can be effectively mentored by somebody you don't connect with. And trust me, we did about a year of programs on mentoring, week in, week out, digging deep, researching, coming, interviewing, and doing all sorts to go deep. And we've also had, I think, about 9 webinars on Inamogate over a 2-year period on mentoring and mental health. So I'm not speaking from nowhere if I say that I doubt if you can be effectively mentored by someone you don't connect with. There is some knowledge base I'm speaking from. However, having said that, if that person only connects with you, but that person cannot guide you, then that person is not a mentor, he's only a friend, right? I remember one of the episodes I said, if the person connects with you, but the person cannot guide you, the person is not a mentor, he's a friend. I'm laughing at the other part. The other part is, if the person can guide you, but does not connect with you and is not going to support you, that person is also not a mentor. He or she is a tormentor. And that's the part I laughed about. But jokes aside now. So yes, you need your passion. Yes, you need to identify the gaps in the field. Yes, you need a lot of research to help you identify the gaps you want to, or to give you more information. Sometimes you don't need the research to identify the area you want to add value to humanity on. However, typically you would, even at the minimum, need some research to learn more about it. I was reading an article in a Harvard Business Review journal recently, and I smelled the man we call Steve Jobs today. I don't know if you know, he used to be called Steve Wozniak, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name well. You can research it. I've read that before, that he used to be called Steve Wozniak. But what I read that was interesting to me was how he first, sort of saw the need to create what he ended up creating, what became his signature, his signature product, so to say, right? What he left for us in the world, and which others began to emulate, right? He was a pioneer with a lot of the things he created, and others began to create. I read that, they had some kind of a seminar or a program, and then because he has a mind to spot the unusual, sometimes some of us in our organizations, we quell new thoughts because we think we are the boss. Anytime it looks new, it doesn't look regular, just quell it. Last week we said, no, you don't do that. There must be or 2 weeks ago, I can't remember exactly when, there must be a process through which you assess the innovative idea, you pilot, and so on and so forth, but you do not quell a fresh thought. Exceptional information is very, very important. In research, sometimes they are called outliers. You don't just look for what adapts to the norm. There may be no new thing in an old way. I'll say that again. There may be no new thing in an old way. Last week we said a vision is supposed to be a new thing. If you're looking for a new thing, then be open to old ways, right? So it was said that, it was this kind of ability to atypical that helped Steve Jobs, who was called Steve Wozniak then, right? They said they had a mainframe engineer, and then when the mainframe engineer, when he saw this, what they call Altair 8800 microcomputer, Altair, ALTAIR, and Altair 8800 microcomputer at the first meeting of this computer club on March 5, 1975. When he saw it, other mainframe engineers dismissed the Altair as too small to be useful. Can you imagine that? So they had this meeting of mainframe engineers. Steve Wozniak was one of the meetings. It was said to have held in a computer club on March 5, 1975. And when they saw it, other mainframe engineers dismissed it as too small to be useful. Now, before you laugh, remember this is 1975. Even I remember in the 1990s when we go into our computer room in school and we had this relatively big computer. So imagine how big it was in 1975. And for someone to have brought what looked very tiny, how could you really think it will amount to anything? But as far as Steve was concerned, it was this unusual smallness that prompted the new story of the future for him. As far as he was concerned, he could become something where the world would work and play. It could become a sport. That computer that looked too small for all the other mainframe engineers became for Steve what could change how people work and play. He was said to have run back to his home and engineered Apple I just because he could do a little bit more of fact finding in an area he was passionate about. What I really want you to see here is not Steve Jobs' openness to new things. We'll talk more about that. That's also very important. But I want you to see the third element I'm referring to when it comes to developing a vision. Yes, passion. He already knew he was passionate about technology. He was passionate about computers, which is why he was a mainframe engineer, which is why he was in this meeting in the first instance, right? But he was also on the lookout for gaps, because as at the time, creating a computer of a certain size was not going to meet any new need. We already had a computer of a certain size in 1975. But that little thing that was brought into that room that looked unuseful to other mainframe engineers was what Steve Wozniak then recognized as what could change the world, what could change how people worked and play. And it was in the course of doing research. What do I want to say? Please, I beg you, attend conferences. I do that a lot. Invest in meetings, attend webinars, go out, explore. Even before you talk about mentors, I said I'm not going to talk about mentors yet, because even the area in which you be mentored, sometimes you don't know until you have done research. Now, let me tell you the other part. Even the people who are going to mentor you, sometimes you meet them in the course of attending conferences, and not just attending as a passive person, but participating in conferences. I don't know how many people I have met, how many people that have shaped my life I have met in the course of engaging. I was talking about Jika earlier. I didn't meet him in my house. I met him, I remember then, I must have been very, very young. I remember going for a program back then in African Independent Television as a teenager, I think, called Our Time. It's Our Time. And I went and I participated, and he spotted me and said, who is this girl? And that's how I became a mentor, a protege. And he took me home all with his wife, with his daughter, with his sons then. They later had a daughter. And I learned so much, but I did not meet him in my home. I did not meet him sitting down in the comfort of my house. Visioning is not for the lazy. I've said it. You must add diligence to your intelligence. It's not for the complacent. It's not for those who think they have conquered the world already. It doesn't work that way. I said it last week. Not everybody needs to be a transformational leader. There's no crime in that. But the moment you accept responsibility for transformational leadership, guess what? You are saying, I am to be stretched. You are doing what is compelling. You are doing what is challenging. It's not an easy thing to accomplish. It's a stretch goal, but it's doable. and you will leave your mark in the world. I know this has been a stretch so far. I'm going to take a short break now and we'll be back. My name is Tolu Madara. This is still the making of a transformational leader. And today we are looking at developing vision as a transformational leader. How do I even develop it? Developing and communicating vision as a transformational leader is a full session, but we are likely to go deeper into the communication element in the next one. For today, we are spending more time on developing vision as a transformational leader. This is Tolu Madara. I will be back shortly and we'll soon be wrapping up. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. So don't forget, those elements are very critical. Whether you are developing for yourself or you're pipelining your transformational leaders in your organization, you can work with these. Like I said, these are thoughts that I have developed over decades of walking this path. One, what are you passionate about? Extremely important. What are the gaps in the field you are passionate about? And they're not going to jump on you. You are going to learn them the more you research, the more you go deep, right? And that brings me to the third part: research, study, dig deep, right? Researching is not just desk work, it's also field work. Engage, go out, meet people, learn, explore. And number 4, submit yourself to mentors, submit yourself to coaches. And that comes with a lot of right attitude, comes with a lot of right character. Mentors don't owe you. Oftentimes they're established in their careers themselves. They're established in the field you want themselves. So if you have a nasty attitude and you're listening to me and you are probably not at a certain stage in your career, you will do yourself a whole lot of good to get rid of that attitude. Even if you think you have accomplished a certain level, guess what? There's always more. There's always more to be done. I was talking about Bill Gates earlier. Even though he's no longer on Microsoft, he's on Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation today, and he's doing a whole lot in the health field. He's doing a lot with research. He supported the lady who sort of birthed the mRNA vaccine that accelerated the mRNA technology, beg your pardon, the mRNA innovation that accelerated the birthing of the COVID vaccine. Bill Gates, I think, was one of those that supported her, and it's doing a whole lot in the nations of the earth. So the fact that he's out of Microsoft today and he has handed over Microsoft and ensured that people are carrying on in his absence does not mean that he's still not doing things. So I do not care where you are in your career. The truth is, there's a whole lot more to do. As long as you're in this phase, on this phase of the earth, as long as you're on this side of eternity, there is a whole lot to do. If you carry the capacity to have breadth one vision, you can do more. You can do it again. You can explore, but you need to make sure that you have an attitude of continuous learning and, of course, continuous diligence. Now, don't get me wrong in all of this. Learn to rest is also very important. Learn to be renewed. Sometimes you'll be struggling with a vision, and all you need to do is to step away. If you step away for 5 minutes, you'll be surprised how you can come back refreshed. Sometimes you need to step away for a day. Sometimes you need to step away for a month, depending on where you are in the level of, sort of how would I put it now? Use of your energies, your physical, mental, emotional energies, and so on and so forth. If you are closer to exhaustion, of course, you need a greater break. But having done that, having renewed, having revitalized, having taken time to refresh yourself, then you should go back again to dig into the field you're trying to make a difference in, to explore, to engage, and as you do that, you are very likely to identify those gaps that can become the vision that you would leave your signature legacy on the world with. I think we're going to draw a curtain on today's edition of the program, and next week we'll be back talking about still developing and communicating the vision as a transformational leader. We'll be looking more at the aspect of communication. How do I communicate this vision? Once I have tried to develop the vision, looking at the things I'm passionate about, looking at the gaps in that area through thorough research, field and desk work, and also working under the supervision of mentors and coaches. Once I've done all that, how then do I make sure that I'm effectively communicating that vision, especially if I already have teams I'm leading, organizations I'm leading, companies I'm leading, departments I'm leading, people who are looking up to me? How do I communicate that vision effectively in a manner that inspires them and charges them to want to rise and do more? These are the things we'll be looking at next week. And until then, I want you to take very good care of yourself. Thank you so much for doing this with us. Remember, you are the reason we do this. You can check us out on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. Our name is Amogate, ARMOURGATE. And you can reach us on contact@theamogate.org. Contact, CONTACT @theamogate.org, right? But you can also follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much. You can also send us a message on our line, +234 810 999 6666, +234 810 999 6666. Until then, it's been great doing this with you. Please take care of yourselves. Remember, today has been about developing and communicating vision as a transformational leader, and we'll be looking mainly at the aspect of developing vision. We'll be back next week to go deeper into how you communicate vision as a transformational leader. Until then, be good to yourselves and continue to do your best to transform your world. Thank you.